Hello everybody, you're listening to the Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. This is the weekly radio show where we chat about the local arts news. We have a different guest on each week. We head over to the Rhylight Zone for a short story and or some poetry. And we catch up with Twangling Jack Ford over in the Oak Shed for a weekly album review. Oh, and we play local, unsigned and or independent musicians. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for the Archer on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And we are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. So this week, we're going to be chatting to poet Elisabeth Horan. And it's time for us to head over to the Rhylight Zone now for some poems, courtesy of local poet Mervyn Cook.
Aunt Martha, from O'Derry Boy, A Childhood in Pictures and Poems. We came down the lane, stones smitten sideways, past whitewashed pillars wishing us here, squat stone-walled dykes grailing cattle and suspicious sheep. Where once was green and full of life, and farmyard sounds and smells, all black became, all grief, all thoughts of her. Who? Auntie? Did no one think to tell? Me? Did no one think I needed to know? No, I screamed in the room where no one spoke. Auntie, who caught us spitting in the middle and said, "Where did you boys learn that?" Auntie, who dusted soda flowers with the flowered wing of a long dead goose. Auntie, who smoked and shook the walls when racked with cough. Who sat with the butcher Hugh, we called him Uncle, in his white van, all cool and red and quiet like meat on a counter ready to be bought. Who sat by the fireside and talked as Sunday slept. All blessings said, all goodbyes gone, we turned around past the pillars cut chewing cows, and I wondered where the sheep had gone. Clearances number 3. When all the others were away at Mass, I was all hers as we peeled potatoes. They broke the silence, let fall one by one like solder weeping off their soldering iron. Cold comfort set between us, things to share, gleaming in a bucket of clean water, and again let fall little pleasant splashes from each other's work would bring us to our senses. So while the parish priest at our bedside went hammer and tongs with prayers for the dying, and some were responding and some crying, I remembered her head bent towards my head, her breath in mine, our fluent, dipping knives, never closer, the whole rest of our lives. Eden Rock by Charles Causley. They're waiting for me somewhere beyond Eden Rock. My father, 25, in the same suit of genuine Irish tweed. His terrier Jack still 2 years old and trembling at his feet. My mother, 23, in a sprigged dress drawn at the waist, ribbon in her straw hat, has spread the stiff white cloth over the grass. Her hair, the colour of wheat, takes on the light. She pours tea from a thermos, the milk straight from an old HP sauce bottle. A screw of paper for a cork slowly sets out the same 3 plates, the tin cups painted blue. The sky whitens as if lit by 3 suns. My mother shades her eyes and looks my way over the drifted stream. My father spins a stone along the water. Leisurely, they beckon to me from the other bank. I hear them call. See where the stream path is. Crossing is not as hard as you might think. I had not thought that it would be like this. Midterm Bake by Seamus Heaney. I sat all morning in the college sick bay, counting bells, knelling classes to a close. At 2 o'clock our neighbours drove me home. In the porch I met my father crying. He'd always taken funerals in his stride, and Big Jim Evans saying it was a hard blow. The baby cooed and laughed and rocked the pram when I came in, and I was embarrassed by old men standing up to shake my hand and tell me they were sorry for my trouble. Whispers informed strangers I was the eldest away at school as my mother held my hand in hers and coughed out angry tearless sighs. At 10 o'clock the ambulance arrived with the corpse staunched and bandaged by the nurses. Next morning I went up into the room. Snowdrops and candles soothed the bedside. I saw him for the first time in 6 weeks. Paler now, wearing a puppy bruise on his left temple. He lay in the 4-foot box as in his cot. No gaudy scars, the bumper knocked him clear. A 4-foot box, a foot for every year. Moss-Spawn Sunlight by Shemasini. There was a sunlit absence. The helmeted pump in the yard heated its iron, water honeyed in the slung bucket, and the sun stood like a griddle cooling against the wall of each long afternoon. So her hands scuffled over the bakeboard. The reddening stove sent its black of heat against her where she stood in a flowery apron by the window. Now she dusts the board with a goose's wing, now sits broad-lapped with whitened nails and measling shins. Here is a space again, the scorn rising to the tick of 2 clocks. And here is love, like a tinsmith's scoop, sunk past its gleam in the meal bin.
Big thank you to Mervyn Cook for his poems for this week's entry into the Rhylight Zone. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound, and this is Charlie Brind with his version of the JCB song.
JCB by Nesloppy. Well, I'm rumbling in this JCB. I'm 5 years old and my dad's a giant sitting beside me, and the engine rattles my bum like berserk, singing don't forget your shovel if you wanna go to work. And my dad's probably had a bloody hard day, but he's been good fun and bubbling and joking away, and the procession of cars stuck behind, they're getting all impatient and angry, but we don't mind. And we're holding up the bypass, whoa, me and my dad having a top laugh, whoa, and I'm sitting on the toolbox, whoa, and I'm so glad I'm not in school, boss, so glad I'm not in school. So we pull over to let the cars pass, and then pull off again, speeding by the summer green grass, and we're like giants up here in our big yellow digger. We're like Zoids or Transformers, or maybe even bigger. And I wanna transform into a Tyrannosaurus Rex and eat up all the bullies and the teachers and their pets. And I'll tell all my mates that my dad's B.A. Baracus, only with a JCB and Bruce Lee's nunchuckers. And we're holding up the bypass, whoa, me and my dad having a top laugh, whoa, and I'm sitting on the toolbox, whoa, and I'm so glad I'm not in school, boss, so glad I'm not in school. and we're holding up the bypass. Whoa. Me and my dad having a top laugh. Whoa. And I'm sitting on the toolbox. Whoa. And I'm so glad I'm not in school, boss. So glad I'm not in school. Say I'm Luke, I'm 5 and my dad's Bruce Lee. Drives me round in his JCB. I'm Luke, I'm 5 and my dad's Bruce Lee. Drives me round in his JCB. I'm Luke, I'm 5 and my dad's Bruce Lee. Drives me round in his JCB. I'm Luke, I'm 5 and my dad's Bruce Lee. Drives me round and we're holding up the bypass. Whoa. Me and my dad having a top laugh. Whoa. And I'm sitting on the toolbox. I'm not in school, boss. So glad I'm not in school. See, I'm Luke, I'm 5 and my dad's Bruce Lee. Drives me around in his JCB. I'm Luke, I'm 5 and my dad's Bruce Lee. Drives me around in his JCB. I'm Luke, I'm 5 and my dad's Bruce Lee. Drives me around in his JCB. I'm Luke, I'm 5 and my dad's Bruce Lee. Drives me around in his JCB.
Up on the days like these, I've nowhere to go, and time flies right by like the breeze. I can't run and I can't hide, 'cause this feeling comes from inside. But I'm pretty sure this ain't all there is. So I start another chapter in my book. I tell myself that this time I'll change my outlook, that the nights go on, and what I'm just singing all the same songs. And I wonder why I'm such an optimist on days like these. I feel myself spin to lost, and I must believe that days like this will come to pass. When I get home, the night has started slow. I don't know if I ever took all the cars on that long old ring road, but it doesn't matter now. I'll try again tomorrow anyhow. But I'll never stop trying. I think that that's what's worst, 'cause I'm sick and tired of feeling second class. Just like it's always been, things have had to go out in the past. No matter how hard I try, somebody new comes in and slips by, and I'm sat eating the dust as they take the first on days like these. I feel myself spin to lost, and I must believe days like this will come to pass. Just tell me the answer, what's the right thing to say, 'cause I always get it wrong with every attempt that I make. Just give me a reason, what's the right thing to do, 'cause I'm hanging on a wire here. Can you just give me a clue? some things are for winning, but most are just for fun. And it really doesn't matter if you're applauded or drowned in chatter. But to me it seems the same in every place that I go. Ones that really try to push down to a low. The game has gone to a stage, everyone wants to be on top, and you're only popular if you're gonna throw a massive strop when you're not welcomed as a superstar, the next coming of whoever. And people like me can only sit and say, well, whatever, 'cause you know this will get better sometime and somewhere. And days like these I wish you just didn't care. On days like these, on days like these.
That was Days Like These by Dan Pride, and before that we had Charlie Bryn with his version of the JCB song. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to be joined now by this week's guest, who is poet Elisabeth Horan. What was the last book that you read, and what did you think of it?
Oh gosh, really good question. The last book I read is by a really good friend of mine. He's in the UK, and you know, he's a poet kind of like myself. I read a lot of like my contemporary friends' poets, and it's called Dawn's Incision. It's beautiful, kind of. It's love poetry about him and a man. He's gay. It's just wonderful work, and I really I enjoy reading, you know, other poets who are kind of in my world, in my life. And yeah, that's the most recent thing I read, and then I went to his book launch, which was really fun. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, and we'll chat some more about poetry sort of throughout this call. But I thought a good place to get started would be to ask you, how long have you been writing, and where did you get your start?
Super. Yeah, so I started writing when I was, let's see, like 40. I'm 49 now. So I'm kind of a late bloomer in this world. I was always like a waitress and a secretary my whole life, which was not a lot of fun. And then I had my two young boys kind of late in life and became a mom. And I was like, you know what? I don't really want my kids to have a secretary mom. I want to like show them that I followed a dream. And so I went back to school and I got a master's in English, and then I got a MFA in poetry, and just started writing like a woman on fire. You know, I had not spoken my truth like ever in my life. And
Yeah.
it was like just kind of letting a bat out of hell, and it exploded. And I wrote a lot in a short period of time and have found some success, which has been amazing. But I think, you know, I wanted my kids to know, if you have a dream, you can follow it, even if you're 40. And I want anyone to know that, poets, whatever your dream is, you know, like try. I've not gotten rich or, you know, famous, but like, I'm proud of myself, you know,
Yeah.
for taking that
Well,
leap.
Well, there's a Leonard Cohen quote where he says, "Poetry is the evidence of life. If your life is burning well, poetry is just the ash." And sort of building on that, do you think that maybe, especially in your case, is there an argument to be made that you have to live life first anyway before you can, you're at a point where you can even, write as much poetry as you've been able to?
Yeah. I think that that certainly could be true. And in my case, I mean, you've read some of my work, and a lot of it is based in reality. And I write about things I know and things I've been through. But I've also read a lot of young poets who just like, maybe they've lived a huge amount of life in their short years, or their old souls or whatever, but they've got it anyway. So I think both miracles can kind of happen. I think in my case, like writing poems in my 20s would have been kind of a smattering of upset teenager stories. Like it would have been like journaling.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had the focus and the craft to actually make it poetry. So for me, yeah, I think, you know, there's kind of no end to what subject I can pick from. But I think some people are just extraordinary as young people and can write incredibly as teenagers. So I think
Yeah.
both can be true. Mhm.
Well, I suppose as well, like you mentioned the love poems earlier, you know, the specifics might change, but, you know, love is love in its many different forms. And, you know, one person writing about love as a 17-year-old, you know, you could be 70 years old and reading it and still be like, I know exactly what they mean. I've been that person.
Yeah.
So I suppose there are
Yeah.
some sort of universal truths that poets can tap into.
I think so too. If you're talking about the heart, if you're talking about pain, I mean, young people understand pain as well as a 50-year-old. I mean, maybe not how to cope with it as well, but they've
Mm.
certainly felt it, you know. Um, so yeah, I think some of those feelings are just self-evident to be able to write about
Yeah.
if you can
Well, and I
tap in.
suppose you know you mentioned about they might not be able to cope with it as well. I mean, poetry in itself can be a coping mechanism, and I wondered has that been what it's been for you?
Yeah, so again, I feel like that's a mixed answer because I would say, I mean, I was in there, I've been in therapy like all my adult life, right?
Mhm.
And I don't anymore because there's nothing left to say. I'm not going to go meet another therapist and tell my sad story, right? It doesn't help. At some point, like telling the story of your parents getting divorced or sexual assault, like it's just fueling the pain and the fire. And sometimes writing about it helps, but then sometimes I've written a book and been like, oh, you know, like that's out there, that's real. Who's going to read this? And you
Mhm.
kind of like check yourself, like, what have I done? So I've had that experience. I think I think it's what you make of it. I mean, I think it's important to tell our own narrative. So like with a lot of my books, the reason I wanted to do it was like to tell my story, my version,
Mhm.
right? Because society has a version and they often don't match at all. So I think that piece of it, I think is important for all of us, you know, to own our story. But I do think retelling sometimes can just open the wound, you know. So I think you have to be careful with yourself when you're, especially if you're writing about trauma and such, to take care of yourself because you can backslide,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
with the
Cool.
content. Yeah.
And you know you've mentioned that you've got quite a few books out and you've been very prolific in the time you have been writing. Could you sort of take
Mhm.
us roughly through your publication history or tell us some of the highlights at least?
I would love to. I've got some of them right here. And this was my first book, which you have read, Bad Mommy, Stay Mommy. And that was my first book. It came out with Isabel Kenyon at Fly on the Wall
Mhm.
Press in 2019, which was kind of my big year of everything kind of exploding for me. And that's about, you know, postpartum depression and trying to stay afloat for your children, right? And not check
Mhm.
out metaphorically or physically to hang on and take, you know, survive it, which is a big deal because some women don't survive postpartum depression
Yeah.
or mental health issues in general. One being Sylvia Plath, who I so this is the book. This is the larger collection based off of Bad Mommy Stay Mommy, and it's called Just to Right of the Stove, which after I finished Bad Mommy Stay Mommy, this grew out of. And so this
Mhm.
is about me and Plath. Plath has been very influential for me when I read her extensively doing my MFA. You know, is this example of somebody letting people see the inner monster and
Yeah.
not hiding from it. Like, this is me. So you take the monster with me. We're coming along, both of us, for the ride. And
Mhm.
that gave me the courage to like let that monster show as well. And but you know, she didn't make it through the mental illness, and her children suffered for it. And you know, so the book is her and I talking in our kitchen up to the moment where she kills herself. So it's quite
Mm.
intense. And it's talking about kind of parallel pain, but in the end I do survive for a lot of reasons. I mean, who knows, you know, maybe if she had had proper care and medication, maybe if she hadn't been married to a cheating, you
Mhm.
know, there's too many variables, but like she, you know, she didn't have what she needed clearly. I've also written a lot about Frida Kahlo, as you know, and I got really involved in ekphrastic poetry again in my MFA. I love taking either a painting, a song, even. I think you can do ekphrastic poetry about music. I've done a
Yeah.
small book about Fiona Apple's music, but this one was the first one I did, and that's self portrait. So that's me writing a poem about probably 55 of her paintings, kind of chronicling her life through her art, and
Yeah.
telling that story. And it is bilingual. It's some in Spanish, some in English. I worked very hard to learn Spanish over my life. And then I wrote a follow up to it called The Mask, and that's with Broken Spine Arts, Alan Perry, in near Liverpool. Um, so I enjoy, like, Frida Kahlo to me, it's like an artistic sister who,
Yeah.
created out of so much pain, during so much pain, so like me and her and Sylvia, we kind of have this, I kind of have like seances with them and then I write for them. I enjoy trying to like get into the mind of another creative artist, and making connections with them.
Oh,
So and then this is my little Emily Dickinson joy of my life. It's called Odd List, Odd House, Odd Me. And Dickinson, um, I've learned a lot from Dickinson of how to slant rhyme, how to blow people away, how to, be powerful quietly, like so much, and she lives her house is about an hour and a half south of me.
yeah.
And I've been there, and it's just, she inspires me, and her writing is just impeccable. So, and again, she
Awesome.
lets that monster out of the bag, and she did it so long ago. All these women did it
Yes.
so long
Yeah.
ago when they weren't given a voice. They had to like forge a voice through the male world and
Yeah.
strive to be seen and heard. So I find that extremely courageous.
Cool. I know that, you've mentioned there, I mean, I suppose there are some of your influences as well, but is there anyone that you haven't mentioned there who you'd love to do something similar with, to do another book of poetry on? Any other kind of key figures?
Yeah. Well, Robert Frost, I learned a lot from. And again, I'm in Vermont, and he was Vermont and New Hampshire. But he's so good technically. I'm not that good of a writer technically, but I do like writing kind of pastoral work and kind of small town poetry. I live in a really, really rural area. I like writing about animals and deer and, you know, deer being hunted, for example. I have like a whole book I've worked on about roadkill because I'm
Hmm.
extremely sensitive to animal suffering, and I'm surrounded all around me by deer hunters,
Yeah.
and I struggle with it a lot. I think feel it being a woman sometimes, and any human can feel like you're being hunted and chased, and you know, so I really, so I guess that book, you know, connecting with a deer, I'd love to get that published at some point, and I've had some nibbles on it, but I haven't found a publisher yet. So if you know anybody,
Yeah.
but
Or if anyone's listening, yeah.
if anyone's listening, hit me up. It's
Well, and
um
I wanted to ask on that subject because you've worked with a few different publishers,
yeah.
and what have you kind of found are some of the similarities and differences between them, and what's it like to work with a sort of a small indie publisher?
Yeah, it's a challenge. So, when you're starting out and you've got kind of these little baby manuscripts and you send them off, it's like sending out your heart, your newborn.
Hmm.
And aside from getting rejection, you're going to get rejections. But then if all of a sudden you get an acceptance and you're just like, yay, yes. And you commit because you think this is the best thing that in the entire world, and it is. But the problem is, it doesn't always go the way you want. Sometimes the
Hmm.
press was two women and they close and your book no longer exists. So that's happened to me several times. I'm kind of, past 2019 at a point where things are coming around full circle and I'm finding out they don't always renew your publication. And they
Mm,
write you and you go, "Hey, do you want to buy back all the books of yours? Because I'm taking you off our publication list. No one's buying it." And you're like, "I guess so." Um,
yeah.
and that's a bummer because you know I think I understand why small publishers have to do that, and it was in the contract. I read it, that they don't have to renew after a certain amount of time, right?
Hmm.
But you don't really think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
um and so when it does, it's difficult because how do you resell your book as a second edition? I don't
Yeah.
I don't know. If you know anybody willing to do second editions, let me know, because I think a lot of authors going into this don't realize those things can happen. And it feels like a punch in the gut when it does. And then on the other hand, I've worked with some that you sign a contract where they kind of have like the life stranglehold on your book, and you cannot get it back. And I don't know which is worse.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
tried. I mean, I run Animal Heart Press. I'm called the founding editor now, but I started it in 2017 and we're still going. And it's the whole point was to be like kinder to authors, because the
Yeah.
publisher does hold a lot of power. Even if it's a small press, like it's still, you hand over your baby and they take it and you have to trust them, and you can get screwed. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so our whole, like, we don't end anybody's contract unless they write us and say, hey, I want to take my book back. Sure, you can have
Yeah.
it back. It's way more author friendly and very, very sparse contract in terms of it's your work. All we want to do is lift you up and support you. What we've tried to do. But so that was the model. Animal Heart Press, check us out.
You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. I'm here in conversation with this week's guest, who is poet Elisabeth Horan, and this is MLN Ensemble with Steady State. That was Steady State by MLN Ensemble. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain. And it's time for us to be rejoined in conversation now by this week's guest, who is poet Elisabeth Horan.
Well, I suppose it's a particular struggle, getting poetry out there. I mean, do you ever think that you might have it easier if you were maybe a fiction or a non-fiction writer?
I think I should become an erotic short story writer, honestly, and then I might actually make money. I think
It's true.
I
Yeah.
I mean, I have the brain for it. Why not? Like that, I've always said, like, why am I not doing that? Um, yeah, I'm sure if I was really good at creative nonfiction or something and I could get articles out into, essays out into the larger world, I'd be better off. But poetry is what I'm really good at, in my opinion. So I'm not
Yeah.
even, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how to branch other than the erotica. I think I should do that. Um,
Yeah.
Poetic porn, if you will. Be a
Yeah. Well,
lot better
there
seller.
is. I mean, there is there is a sort of a subgenre as well of erotic poetry as well. But again, I should imagine it's harder to sell erotic poetry than just flat out erotic fiction. Because
Right.
poetry always seems to be a harder sell.
Right. And they're so short. I mean, the person's like, well, I'm just getting going. Like, I need to know the
Yeah.
whole thing. Um, so I think, erotic short stories, like just the right amount. Um, I think that's what I would try to do, work
Yeah.
towards a novel. But I've never really had the inkling to try to write like the true American novel or something. I don't know how people do that. I really don't. I
Yeah.
think that's amazing, people who can and have. Um, Maybe my
Just
attention
not for
span
you.
is too short.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. So I wanted to ask you, and maybe this is some more of the work that you've done through your press. But who are some of the new and emerging poets that you're, publishing, mentoring, supporting, or just enjoying reading?
Yeah. Gosh, there's so many. Um, well, the people so I have a lot of UK friends. I feel like even since I started, I feel like the people in the UK have been more accepting of my poetry than American.
Hmm.
And I don't know why that is. I think maybe there's just a tone, or maybe I don't know what it is, but or I've just submitted to good presses in the UK that have worked out. But like Alan Perry at Broken Spine is doing so much stuff, and also a really fantastic writer. Um, and Black Bow Press, they're doing amazing things and writing. I mean, there's so many kind of modern day heroes. I have, like, for example, I got to go see Jericho Brown in Amherst near the Dickinson Museum read. And so extraordinary when you go see somebody read who is so dedicated to their, like, he memorized they memorized all of their poems, like, did
Yeah.
not read from a book, and it was such performance art. And that really inspired me to like try to take my public readings to a, I mean, I'm never going to get where they are, but but to a higher level where you're really connecting with your audience. You're not just standing there like listing it
Yeah.
off. So that really inspires me. Another one is Danez Smith, who um, I've just seen such incredible, like, brave. I mean, there's this idea of like bravery, writing your truth, but it's true. I mean, what's that one like watched on YouTube? It's like a letter to white America, and it's just like boom. And you just can't help but feeling so much. And I want to be like that. I want to emulate that. Another poet that really, really always struck me, and I still read, is Natalie Diaz. Um, Her poem, My Brother Was an Aztec Warrior, I think it's called, just taps into trauma in a way that, like, it's not just like, oh, my life is hard, um, it's so artistic, but
Yeah.
so devastating. And I just think that marriage, I think Ada Limon also does that like that. Because again, we can all write about trauma, but it's journaling. If you're just like, this happened, then this happened, and that was hard. But when you see this artistic marriage of the craft and these extraordinary images and feelings, you just are blown away. And then you're like, I got to do better. I want to do more like that. So those are just a few that really inspired me and still
Ooh.
do.
And you mentioned again, when you do give readings, I wondered, like, is your poetry, do you write it with it being read aloud in mind, or do you write it for the page, or kind of somewhere in between?
I would think somewhere in between. Some of them read aloud so much better than others. Uh, Kind of my more popular poems have definitely been ones that are real fun to read aloud, that either have rhyme, they have some kind of format that people can follow. They're funny, even if it's dark funny. Um, so I guess I would say when I'm writing them, I'm not necessarily thinking about reading them out loud, but I do think I have a voice that hears it as I'm writing it. Um, so it's like taking dictation rather than like, okay, now these words look good together or something like that. It's fluid and like it's my voice, and then I got to write really fast. So in that sense, I think, that's just the creative flow for me. And
Yeah.
then editing can be so sticky because you know, you go back in and you go, but I liked that, I know it's not
Yeah.
working, but oh God. So I kind of suck at editing. I'm really good at editing other people, but my own is a struggle. Like you got to
Yeah.
get in there and let your ego go and go, nope, not good. Like, even though you liked it at 3 a.m, this is not working.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. And just
Yeah.
to end on, it's two questions in one, really. So what's next for you, and where can people follow you to find out more?
Yeah. So I'm trying to finish up a couple like really huge projects. One is the full translation into Spanish of um, the self portrait because I want to get it published in Costa Rica and in Mexico. And my
Hmm.
translator and I, his name's Jorge Montero Calderon, he's in San Jose, Costa Rica. We're trying really hard to get it into the Latin speaking, the Spanish speaking world. I think it deserves to be there. I think people would like it, but that's a tough bridge to jump over as a white woman writing in the voice of Frida Kahlo. So I'm
Yeah.
leaning heavily on we're trying to publish his translation,
Yeah.
not my book, but translated. So that's something I'm pushing really hard on. I've also started writing a book, and I don't know exactly what it's going to be called, but it's about my mom, um, who is struggling with some really severe dementia and kind of going off the Alzheimer's slope. And so I spend every day with her now, caring for her. So I'm writing poems about her and I going to ballroom dancing competitions, which is what we've been doing for the last like 2 years together.
Yeah.
And it's a very different feel. It's not all about me. uh it's good, and I would say it's sad, but it also is therapeutic because I don't have a lot of people to talk to about what I go through on a daily basis. So
Yeah.
trying to find the humor in the stuff we share together, even though it's hard and sad, we do laugh a lot.
Yeah.
And have some pretty special times. So I'd really let like a small chapbook.
Yeah.
Um, that's what I'm trying to work through right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Where can people follow you and get copies of your books?
Yeah. So I'm on Twitter X. It's at Horan Poet. So EHORAN Poet. And that's the same on Instagram. Um, I'm on Facebook, but that's not as easy to find me. I would just say Twitter and Instagram at eHoran Poet. I have a website, eHoranPoet.net. Come stop by Press Animal, check out our books. We have a journal called Feral, as in FERAL, like
Hmm.
feral animal. We'd love anyone to submit. Um, Drop me a line, Elisabeth.Horan@gmail. Come say hi. If you want to order books, I got boxes of books, man. I tell you, because I had to buy them back from some publishers. Right. So
Yeah.
I'll send you a bundle at a
Cool.
discount.
Big thank you to Elisabeth Horan for joining me. You're listening to The Archer on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and this is Burr Honor with Not a Cloud.
but I'm human too, and I break like you, and my bones, they chill to ice. No amount of wine can make this fine whiskey. It numbs the pain, but a sober mind can see it's time for us to part again. The rains arrive and still we strive to keep the dream alive. Though it's not goodbye, as my wings take flight, you'll be always on my mind. Different stations and rationalities. Through every season, you'll always be with me. The sun will rise, and I realize the beauty in your eyes. We'll meet once more across that wind-swept shore, with not a cloud in all the sky. Yes, we'll meet once more, kiss like never before, with not a cloud in all the sky.
And I'll be there, just pick up the phone. Don't wanna think that you're on your own. So if you think that you need some company, don't be scared to come reach out to me. Don't hide away if you're feeling lonely. It's okay, oh baby, let me help you out. Take you out, give me the benefit of the doubt, and I'll be there, we can hit the town. I'll make you laugh if you're feeling down. If you think that you need to give your mind a rest, have a chat and get things off your chest. Deep inside you know it's for the best, and it's okay, oh baby, let me take you out. Smile, I can see it's been quite a while since you were free, so put on your shoes. We'll take a walk and talk about your blues, and I know about the pain that you've been through, the rage and disdain, I see it too. But please let me explain something to you. You'll be okay, baby, let me make you smile. Tell me what you need from me. Tell me the guy you want me to be, and I'll be there, just say the word. I want to help, but I haven't heard. So if you think that you maybe want some space, or perhaps you need a friendly face to get your head back to your happy place, that's okay. Tell me what you need from me. cross the line. When we're together I forget the time. We're just the same like 2 in 1. This ain't time flies when you're having fun. Baby, you were lost and it was me who found you. And although this advice may astound you, just think about the people that you keep around you, and you'll be okay. Tell me if I cross the line.
That was Help You Out by the Sepia Tone Folk Collective, and before that we had Not a Cloud by Bert Honor. You're listening to The Art Show on 106.6 FM Wickham Sound. I'm your host, Dane Cobain, and it's time for us to head over to the Oak Shed now to catch up with Twangling Jack Ford for a weekly album review.
Neutral Milk Hotel, In the Aeroplane Over the Sea, an album I've been listening to on Amazon Prime. Neutral Milk Hotel were basically one man called Jeff Mangum with some of his mates. This was their second album and was followed by Mangum having a breakdown. Back when all the cool kids seemed to be into Neutral Milk Hotel, I borrowed the CD from the library, hoping not to be seen and be assumed to be an embarrassing middle-aged crisis hip parent trying to get down with the youth. It sounded okay and I left it at that because no one was asking me for a recommendation. This was in the early 2000s, but In the Aeroplane Over the Sea was released in 1998. So even the cool kids were catching up. A few years after that, Stuart Maconie made it a featured album on his Six Music Freak Zone. For me, this brought it into the domain of the appreciators of serious music. I remember Stuart Maconie pointing out the power of the singing to the point where the voice is being strained, something you do not often hear being sung over acoustic guitars. I would go even further and say the singing verges on religious chanting. Islamic calls to prayer, Gregorian chanting and the cantor's sacred script sung in a synagogue. Religion, along with sex, is a recurring topic in songs inhabited by a carnival freak show of sad characters. The lyrics are quite moving in places and are always interesting, but there is so much else going on that would attract a listener like me. The band sound like they've got a fuzzbox and they're going to use it, but really it is the sound of VU needles firmly in the red. The raw acoustic guitar, highly distorted or not, is on occasions paired with or replaced by New Orleans funeral marching band trombone, rainy day women horns, drunken mariachi players, and what sounds like snake charmers from outer space. Neutral Milk Hotel are prone to using drones made up of disparate textures that remind me of some of my favourite artists from an entirely different era. Robert Wyatt, Brian Eno and the Canterbury bands. When acoustic guitar performers write a song, there is a tendency for them to use blocks of even numbers of chords and then sing simple melodies within these blocks, making some verses and some choruses. The songs on this album are much more sophisticated. The melodies are exceptionally strong, and where a lesser writer would stop the line, these carry on in unexpected directions. Neutral Milk Hotel, In the Aeroplane Over the Sea.
Big thank you to Twangling Jack Ford for this week's album review. Thank you to Elisabeth Horan for being this week's guest. Thank you to everyone whose music I've shared. As always, you can find us on Facebook. If you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound, you should be able to find us. And we are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. Please do leave us a short review on your podcast platform of choice. You can also find us on Facebook if you search for The Art Show on Wickham Sound. And we are repeated on Wickham Sound on Monday nights. We're on the Wickham Sound Listen Again, iTunes, Spotify, and wherever else you get your podcasts. I think I said that. Oh, and you can email me here at the studio on dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. That's dane.cobain@wickhamsound.org.uk. So I'm going to leave you with one last tune, and this is the Scardinals with their version of Too Much Too Young. I'll catch you next week.
Having fun. out the sight.